French report today. The spring selling season is here, and what is going on in the Murrieta, Temecula, Menifee Valley real estate market? This is my boots on the ground take. The market is hot, and I'll fill you in on the details. Hi, I'm Jessica Janung with the Janung team and Real Broker. Thank you, as always, for spending time with me on this channel. First of all, my apologies for not getting my market report out with the March stats last month. I will be going over some of the current market stats later in this video. I like to get you these market reports right after the month turns over, but we have been hopping lately and I've only been able to publish listing videos on this channel. But we're getting caught up now, and I'm going to be giving you some estimated April stat information as well, so you'll have the very latest news on what's happening in the market because we've seen some rapid changes. My official April market report update will be out in about a week. We have a lot of real estate news to talk about today too. We'll talk about the National Association of Realtors commission lawsuit and some upcoming changes to buyer agent compensation, and we'll talk briefly about the Fed and interest rates. The short story on rates is we are headed in the wrong direction. Sorry, folks. What? Let's start with what is happening in our personal business. After a pretty slow start to the year, the spring selling season is now here in full force. We went from about 6 or 7 escrows to 17 escrows in about a month, and that doesn't include 2 closings that we had last week. We're still seeing lots of multiple offers on properties, and open houses have been pretty busy as well. We just had a team meeting and we noticed and agreed that open houses over the past couple of weekends have been particularly busy. Although 17 escrows are nowhere near the record amount of transactions that we've managed in the past at once, it feels similar to our max over the past several years. The most amount of escrows we've had open at one time was in November of 2021, when it was just myself and Chris, my husband, and we had 31 open escrows. Keep in mind, a lot of our clients are buying new construction homes, so they weren't all closing in 1 month, but about half of those did close that November, and it almost killed us.
No question about it. I am ready to get hurt again.
It is not likely that we'll see that type of market again. We are more prepared, plus we have a great team with Christina and Scott now. But a couple weeks ago, it was feeling like 2021 again in our business because several of our transactions are on the more complicated side with lots of contingencies flying around on both the buyer and seller side, meaning that some of our buyers have homes to sell and close on before we can close on their Murrieta area homes, and some of our sellers are trying to buy their next home before having their current home sold. These transactions, they take a lot of skill, organization, patience, and a bit of luck, quite frankly. But I feel like we're crossing over to the other side of the spring selling season, and it's mellowing out a little bit, especially now that a couple of our newer listings are in escrow, which means that we aren't doing open houses. Sometimes we were doing multiple open houses each weekend. My apologies again for missing our market report that goes over the March numbers for Menifee, Murrieta, and Temecula, but there was some big news there, so I want to give you that info real quick. Temecula had a huge price increase month over month of $75,000 from $725,000 to $800,000, which I believe is a new all-time high. Menifee sales price declined a tad, and Murrieta's sales price increased about $25,000, which is a healthy month-over-month increase and typical of what we see in the spring selling season. The number of listings sold in all 3 cities increased, which is also typical of what we see in the spring. The median days on market, or the amount of time it takes a home to sell, declined in all 3 cities, which is also typical. The spring is the busy buying and selling time, so it makes sense that homes are selling faster. Number of listings throughout all 3 cities was pretty flat with small gains, and Murrieta had a sizable decline. The number of listings is our inventory of homes for sale, and in a typical year, this number would increase, but it's not as of March this year. I do expect the inventory to rise once the April numbers post. This lack of inventory is why we saw some big price gains in Murrieta and Temecula especially. Because Temecula had such a huge price jump in March, I do expect that price to settle back down when we get the full month of April stats to post. If you recall from my previous market reports, the Temecula sales price was actually on a 4 to 5 month price decline. I just pulled the month-to-date stats for April, and the median sales price in Temecula has indeed come down a little bit to $785,000. That's down from $800,000, if you recall, from March. Here is an interesting stat on a related note. The median list price of a single family home in Temecula month to date in April was $765,000. The median price home buyers are paying over asking is $20,000. Pretty steep right now for Temecula. Let's talk briefly about the elephant in the room, which is the commission lawsuit settlement by the National Association of Realtors, often referred to as NAR. Such a mess, quite frankly, and we are dealing with a lot of uncertainty in the industry. I'm mostly just waiting for it all to shake out, and I'm not going to go into too much detail here because we would be here all day, but I want to give you a brief overview so you have a working knowledge about potential changes to the way buyer agency will operate. Lots of talk in our industry, and most consumers have heard about it by now as well. Here is the Cliff Notes version of this lawsuit. Sitzer-Burnett is a class action lawsuit that was filed in Missouri federal court by a group of home sellers in that state against NAR and other defendants, including brokerages of Anywhere, Berkshire Hathaway, Home Services, Keller Williams, and RE/MAX. These are all very large brokerages. The plaintiffs claim that real estate commission rates are too high, buyers' representatives are paid too much, and NAR's Code of Ethics and MLS Handbook, along with the defendants' practices, led to inflated commission rates. The plaintiff's attorney, named Michael Ketchmark, who is a personal injury attorney, did many mock trials perfecting analogies that were unrelated to real estate, which he used to make his case with the jury. The attorneys for NAR were terrible. They were not prepared, and spoiler alert, they lost big time. I heard the NAR lawyers showed up in full force in fancy suits to a trial in Missouri, mind you. And like I said, we lost big time. The jury decided NAR and the brokerages were guilty of collusion and commission price fixing. Quite frankly, everything about this lawsuit makes me angry because it is just not true. To be fair, there were some training videos where brokerage trainers were on tape saying things about the presentation of commissions in a listing appointment that is well known to not be acceptable practice. But I think it's hugely unfair to lump 1.5 million realtors into this category with these bad apples. Every industry has bad apples, and that doesn't mean that the rest of us should pay the price. The frustrating part about this lawsuit to me, and I have not seen the Missouri contracts, but I just have to assume that they must be vastly different. The California listing agreement must be vastly different than the listing agreement that they have in Missouri, because the California agreements really spell out how much the commission is. It says in bold that it's negotiable, and then it clearly says how much is going to the buyer agent. And I actually go over this part very specifically with every client when we take a listing. Here's the total amount. Here's the amount that's going to the buyer agent, because I don't want them to be confused, like those amounts are being added together. Like, let's say the commission is 5% total, and then it'll say down here, 2.5% is going to be the cooperating broker agent for the buyer. I don't want them to think that it's 7.5%, so I clearly explain it to them, and it clearly states on there that it's negotiable. This lawsuit has been a fascinating case study on how information is disseminated, how easily misinformation is reported, and the way some in the media feel the need to make the topics more contentious than they are in reality, or blow the issue way out of proportion. Everything about this trial, in my opinion, demonstrates what is wrong with our legal system and the constant quest of these greedy attorneys scouring the country looking to make a buck. The 6% commission is gone. These are the headlines about the verdict. I wish 6% was the standard commission, but in our area, it certainly is not. Commissions have always been negotiable. There is no fixed amount, and agents are not secretly getting together and agreeing to a fixed amount. There has always been a range. I think commission transparency is very important, but unfortunately, I think that this settlement actually achieves the opposite, and I'll explain why. There are two important changes that will happen. The first is that buyers wanting to work with a realtor will need to sign a written buyer brokerage agreement before the agent shows them a property. And in that agreement, the services provided need to be listed, and the amount of compensation your realtor is to be paid will need to be spelled out. Many agents I know, and quite frankly, they tend to be the more experienced and established agents, already do not take a buyer client out without a signed buyer broker agreement. These agents want clients that are as equally committed to working with them as they are to the client before going to work for them. Our industry is actually happy about this part of the settlement because it increases transparency and really lays out what services will be provided and how your agent will be compensated. All good things. The part of the agreement, which is the big unknown, is that NAR has agreed to remove the buyer agent commission field and amount from the MLS. Currently, agents can see what commission percent or amount the seller is offering in the MLS listing, and the public can see these amounts too because they flow through on sites like Redfin and Zillow. This field will be gone from the MLS because they want this amount to be negotiated in the offer. Sellers are still able to offer buyer agent compensation, and my opinion is that most of them still will based on conversations with my seller clients recently, but it cannot be listed on the MLS according to the terms of the proposed agreement. To me, this is not as big of a deal as I feel like some people are making it, but this is what I mean by this lawsuit achieving the opposite of commission transparency. Instead of realtors and the public being able to see the buyer agent commission being offered, now it's not on the record and it's more secretive in my opinion, so I don't love that naturally. So this settlement still has to be court approved, and the Department of Justice has their hands all over this case as well, and there is talk about the DOJ intervening in the settlement. That is a topic for another day, but it is very frustrating from my perspective, and I can think of a million other issues facing this country that the DOJ should be focusing on besides realtor commissions. Our government, in its infinite wisdom, wants the buyers to pay their own agent, which might make many buyers decide to forego independent representation, which is how it often works in Europe and Australia. The government does not understand how our industry works and why the system as it is beneficial to both buyers and sellers. Some people think this will bring the prices for houses down, which is a complete joke and will do no such thing. This is just another example of how they do not understand our industry, and they are not working with sellers who will still try to pocket every dollar they can, and rightfully so. Sellers are not about to discount their house if a buyer broker is not getting paid. Again, a topic for another day. I want to end on some more good news. Joking, of course, which is that interest rates are creeping back up again. I just checked Mortgage News Daily and the 30-year fixed rate is at 7.52%. Ouch. Anyways, I'm staying positive that these things have a way of working out, and we are here to answer any of your real estate related questions, and we absolutely love to hear from you. We'll see you next week. Bye.